On the first Saturday after I moved home, Noah stood on the porch, holding the recipe box. Lila had kept it safe during the case. The chipped corner had been repaired by a woodworker from church. The strawberries still looked faded, but real things are allowed to show age. Noah handed it to me with both hands. "Where does it go?" he asked. I set it back on the kitchen counter. "Right there." He nodded seriously. Then he pulled a folded sheet from his pocket. "I made a recipe." I raised my eyebrows. "You cook now?" "No, but Grandma wrote feelings on cards." "So I did one." He handed it to me. At the top, in careful pencil, he had written, "Blue Door Saturday Soup. Ingredients, 1 grandpa, 1 kid. No yelling, 2 bowls. The truth. Extra crackers." At the bottom, he wrote, "Keep warm." I had to turn away for a second. "Too much pepper." He asked. I laughed, and this time it did not hurt. "No, buddy." "Just right. We made soup that afternoon from cans because neither of us felt ambitious." He burned the grilled cheese. I ate it anyway. We sat at the kitchen table while rain tapped the windows. After lunch, Noah asked, "Are you still mad at Mom?" I looked at him carefully. "I am still hurt. Is that the same?" "No, mad is loud. Hurt is heavy." He thought about that. "Can heavy get lighter?" I looked at Ellen's recipe box. "Yes, but not by pretending it isn't heavy." He nodded like that made sense. Marcy came to pick him up at 5. She stood on the porch, thinner now, no makeup, hands tucked into her sleeves like a girl waiting outside the principal's office. Noah hugged me before leaving. Then he surprised her by taking her hand. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. I did not say for what. Maybe for not poisoning the boy against her. Maybe for opening the door. Maybe for surviving what she helped do, I said. "Bring him next Saturday at 10. She nodded. After they left, I stood on the porch and watched their car disappear past the maple trees. The house was quiet, but not empty. That is an important difference. A year later, Noah's trust was under independent management. His school counselor said he was doing better. Marcy was working as a receptionist at a dental office and attending therapy. Caleb sent letters I was not ready to answer. Vivian moved to another state. Blake wrote apologies from prison that sounded too polished, so I stopped reading them. Otis mailed me a birthday card with no return address. I placed it unopened in a drawer. And every Sunday I cooked one recipe from Ellen's box. Some Sundays, Ruth came over and complained about my coffee. Some Sundays, Noah came early and helped. Some Sundays I ate alone and talked to Ellen like I always had. Maybe that makes me old. It does not make me confused. Near the end of that first year, the county held a small hearing to close the emergency parts of the case. Judge Pike reviewed the final reports. Lila sat beside me. Marcy sat across the aisle with Noah. She looked at me once and gave a small nod, not asking for forgiveness, just acknowledging truth. When the judge confirmed that my rights were fully restored and Noah's protections would remain, I felt something inside me loosen, not victory, peace. Outside the courthouse, Noah ran ahead to look at a fountain. Marcy walked beside me. "Dad," she said, "I found one of Mom's old grocery lists." I looked at her. She wrote biscuit ingredients on one side. On the other, I had practiced your name. I told myself it was harmless. Then, her voice shook. I think that was the first time I crossed a line and called it a joke. I said nothing. She wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry. The old me might have softened too quickly. The hurt father in me wanted to grab that apology like a man in water grabs rope." But Ellen's voice came back. "Mercy without truth is just another lie." So I said, "I believe you're sorry. Now become different." She nodded. "I'm trying." I know, that was all. But sometimes all is enough for one day. That evening, Noah and I went back to the Blue House. We made Ellen's cinnamon biscuits. They came out crooked just like hers. He insisted crooked tasted better because straight biscuits looked suspicious. We put the recipe box between us on the table. The sunset came through the kitchen window and turned the strawberry lid. Gold. Noah took one biscuit, broke it in half, and set half on a little plate by Ellen's photograph. "For Grandma," he said. I had to look out the window. He touched my arm. "Grandpa." "Yes?" "I knew it was you in the car." I turned back. "What?" He smiled a little. "Not at first. But when you said some doors get blocked, I knew. Why didn't you say anything?" He'd look down at his biscuit because everybody kept telling me what to say. I wanted to see what you would do if nobody helped you. That went straight through me, and what did I do? He looked at the blue door visible through the hall. You came back. I put my hand over his. No, buddy. I was always trying to get back. There's a difference. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read those places like little porch lights in the dark. I'm an old man now. I move slower. I forget small things sometimes, like where I put my glasses or why I walked into the pantry. But I do not forget what betrayal taught me. It taught me that some people will call you weak when you are only quiet. It taught me that family can become a mask people wear while doing things strangers would be ashamed to do. It taught me that documents matter, but so do children's tears. It taught me that a dead woman's love can still protect a home if she was brave enough to tell the truth before leaving it. And it taught me that the thing they throw away is sometimes the thing that saves you. My family hired me as their driver without recognizing me because they had stopped seeing me long before I put on that cap. To them I was old, useful when signing, embarrassing when speaking, a problem to manage, a name to remove. But Ellen saw me, Noah saw me, and finally I saw myself again, not as a victim, not as a lonely widower sitting in a smoke-damaged kitchen, not as an old man waiting for his children to decide his worth. I was Raymond Mercer, husband of Ellen, grandfather of Noah, keeper of the blue door. And every Saturday now, when that boy comes up the porch steps, he knocks twice, even though he knows he does not have to. I open the door, and the smell of soup or biscuits or burned grilled cheese fills the hall. The recipe box sits on the counter where it belongs. The strawberries on the lid are faded. The corner is repaired. Inside are recipes, receipts, letters, and one pencil card that says, "Keep warm." People think justice is when the guilty lose. Sometimes it is, but the deeper justice is when love survives what greed tried to destroy. So if your own family ever makes you feel invisible, remember this from an old postal inspector who learned the hard way. Keep your eyes open, keep your hands clean, and do not throw away the small things. The truth may be hidden in a recipe box. A child may still be watching, and a blue door that looks closed from the road may still be open. For the one heart brave enough to come home, if you listen to this story until the end, thank you from my heart. Raymond's story reminds us that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us the most. But truth, patience, and courage always find a way to come out. Tell me in the comments, if you were in Raymond's place and your own family revealed their plan right in front of you without recognizing you, what would you do? Also tell me where you are watching from. I always love reading your city and country names in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon so you do not miss the next emotional family story. Take care of yourself, protect your self-respect, and always remember, the people who think you are weak often do not understand the power of your silence. See you in the next story. Bye-bye. My daughter climbed into the back seat of my black town car, dropped my late wife's recipe box on the floor like a bag of trash, and said into her phone, "By tomorrow morning, the court will take Dad's name off everything." I was sitting 3 feet in front of her, wearing a driver's cap, grey gloves, and a company badge that said Henry. Henry was my middle name. She did not recognize me. My son did not recognize me either when he opened the passenger door, tossed his golf bag into my trunk, and told me not to scratch the leather. My daughter-in-law did not recognize me when she leaned close to the window and asked if I could keep my mouth shut about private family conversations. Even my own brother, who had once stood beside me at my wife's funeral, looked through me like I was a parking meter. That is what money does to some people. It teaches them to stop looking at faces. But my grandson Noah looked at me. He was 11 years old, skinny as a rail, sitting in the corner of the back seat with his backpack hugged to his chest. His eyes were red, like he had been crying in a bathroom where nobody came looking for him. He stared at my hands on the steering wheel. Then he whispered so softly I almost missed it. "Grandpa had hands like that." My daughter snapped, "Noah, stop being weird." I kept both hands on the wheel. I had not heard that boy call me Grandpa in almost 3 years. If you've ever been made to feel small by your own family, stay with me, because what happened next changed everything I believed about love. Blood and justice. My name is Raymond Mercer. I am 68 years old. For 32 years, I worked as a postal inspector in Missouri. Most people do not know what that means. They think mail is just envelopes, stamps, and packages left on porches. But I spent my life following paper trails that liars thought no one would ever check. Change of address forms, certified letters, returned notices, forged signatures, missing checks, insurance fraud, elder scams. People think money leaves footprints. It does. But paper leaves fingerprints of the soul. My wife, Ellen, used to tease me about that. "Ray," she would say, standing in our little yellow kitchen with flour on her cheek, "you can turn a grocery receipt into a criminal investigation." She was right. I noticed little things. Wrong dates, crooked stamps, ink that did not match, a name written by a hand, trying too hard to look casual. Ellen said it made me a good inspector and a difficult man to surprise. But she surprised me all the time. She surprised me when she said yes to a poor young man who could not afford a diamond ring. She surprised me when she painted our first front door blue because she said every house needed one brave color. She surprised me when she raised 2 children with more patience than I deserved. And near the end, when cancer had made her voice thin but not weak, she surprised me with a promise. She made me promise I would keep her recipe box safe. Not her jewelry, not the house papers, not the bank folders. Her recipe box. It was a small wooden box with strawberries painted on the lid. Her father had made it for her mother in 1958, and Ellen kept every family recipe in it. Lemon cake, Sunday pot roast, funeral potatoes, Christmas fudge, Noah's favorite cinnamon biscuits. She wrote notes on the cards in blue ink. "Ray likes extra pepper. Caleb hates onions but eats them if hidden. Marcy burned this twice but laughed both times. Noah calls these moon cookies. That box was our family. History and kitchen language. The night before she died, Ellen touched my wrist and said, "Ray, if the children ever fight over what I left behind, do not argue with them. Listen first, then open the recipe box." I thought she was confused from the pain medicine. I said, "Ellen, nobody is going to fight." She looked at me the way a wife looks at a husband who has not wanted to see the obvious. "Promise me." So I promised. For 2 years after Ellen died, I kept that box on the kitchen counter. Every Sunday morning I opened it, pulled out one card, and cooked whatever recipe my hands landed on. Sometimes the food tasted good. Sometimes it tasted like grief. But I cooked anyway, because the smell of cinnamon or garlic made the house feel less empty. Then my children changed. Maybe they had always been changing, and I just did not want to admit it. My son Caleb had become a real estate developer with shiny shoes and a voice he used only in public. My daughter Marcy had married a man named Blake who called himself a wealth strategist, but never seemed to have money of his own. Caleb's wife, Vivian, ran charity events for people she did not like. They all looked successful in photographs. They all spoke softly in restaurants. They all knew how to touch your arm while taking something from you. At first, it was little things. Caleb asked if I had updated my estate plan. Marcy asked if I was still comfortable living alone. Vivian asked whether the house was too much emotionally. Blake offered to simplify my accounts. I said no each time. Not because I hated help. I just knew the difference between help and handling. Then I had my fall. It happened in the grocery store parking lot on a cold January morning. Black ice under my boot. 1 second I was carrying milk and coffee. The next second, the sky cracked white above me. I broke my hip and hit my head hard enough to spend 4 days in the hospital. That was when my children started using a new voice with me. It was soft, patient, and poisonous. Dad, we're worried. Dad, you're not tracking things. Dad, you forgot what the doctor said. Dad, We need to protect you from stress. They came to my house while I was in rehab and moved things. They said they were cleaning. They threw away Ellen's old aprons. They donated my work files. They took my truck keys. Worst of all, when I came home, the recipe box was gone from the kitchen counter. Marcy said she had put it somewhere safer. When I asked where, she smiled like I was a child asking for a toy. We'll talk about it when you're stronger. That was the first time I felt fear in my own house, not fear of being alone. I knew how to be alone, fear of being erased while still alive. 3 months later, they held what they called a family care meeting at Caleb's house. It was not a care meeting. It was an ambush with catered sandwiches. Caleb sat at the head of his dining table. Marcy sat beside him with a folder. Vivian had a tablet. Blake had that smooth little smile men wear when they have already spent money that is not theirs. My brother Otis was there too, which surprised me. Otis had always loved whatever room made him feel important. Noah sat on the stairs behind them, listening. Caleb cleared his throat and said, "Dad, this is hard, but we have to be honest. You're declining. I'm healing from a broken hip," I said. Marcy opened the folder. "You missed 2 utility payments. I was in rehab. You left the stove on. I boiled tea and turned it off." Vivian tilted her head. "Raymond, people in decline often get defensive." I looked at her. "People being robbed do too." The room went quiet. Blake chuckled. "That kind of accusation is exactly why we need legal protection in place." Then Marcy pulled out a document and slid it across the table. "Durable power of attorney. Medical authority. Asset management permission." A clean little stack of papers designed to make me disappear behind signatures. I did not touch it. Caleb leaned forward. "Sign it, Dad, or we'll have to ask the court." That was when Noah spoke from the stairs. "Mom, why are you making Grandpa scared?" Marcy turned on him so fast the boy flinched. "Go upstairs, but Grandma said Grandpa gets to stay in the blue house." The blue house. That was what Noah called my home because of Ellen's brave front door. Marcy's face hardened. "Grandma is gone." Noah's chin trembled. "But she said," I said, "go upstairs." He ran. Not walked, ran. That sound did something to me. His small feet hitting those polished stairs, fleeing adults who used concern like a belt. I knew then this was not only about my house. It was about what kind of people would be allowed to shape that boy's heart. I slid the papers back. No. Caleb's smile died. Within 6 weeks, my family filed a petition claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my property. They used my fall. They used grief. They used one missed appointment. They used the fact that I sometimes talked to Ellen when I cooked. They said I was confused because I called my daughter by my wife's name once when I was half asleep after surgery. They said I was paranoid because I locked my filing cabinet. They said I was unstable because I accused them of taking the recipe box. And then they did something worse. They told Noah I did not want to see him. I found that out later. At the time, I only knew he stopped coming over. The first hearing was humiliating. My own children sat in court and described me like an old chair nobody wanted to throw away without permission.
Caleb wore a navy suit.
Marcy cried at the right moments. Vivian held tissues she never used. Blake rubbed Marcy's back for the judge. Otis nodded along, pretending sorrow. Their lawyer presented me as a lonely widower, slipping into confusion. My lawyer at the time was a tired man named Preston who handled traffic tickets and divorces. He meant well, but he did not understand what was happening. He told me compromise might be best. Temporary oversight, he said. Shared authority.
Family harmony.
Family harmony is a beautiful phrase when honest people use it. In the mouth of a thief, it is a shovel. The judge ordered a temporary financial conservatorship pending evaluation. Caleb was appointed limited co-manager of my larger accounts. The house could not be sold yet, but repairs, taxes, and protective actions could be arranged through family oversight. I walked out of court, feeling like someone had put a sheet over my face before I died. In the parking lot, Caleb touched my elbow. "You made this harder than it had to be." I looked at his hand until he removed it. Marcy said, "Dad, one day you'll thank us." Behind them, Noah sat in Vivian's SUV, watching me through tinted glass. He lifted one hand. Vivian pulled away before I could wave back. That night I went home and sat in the kitchen where the recipe box used to be. The counter looked naked. I kept thinking about Ellen's promise. Do not argue. Listen first, then open the recipe box. But the recipe box was gone. 2 weeks later, my bank card stopped working at the pharmacy. 3 weeks later, my truck was removed from my driveway for safety. A month later, a woman from a senior living facility called to confirm my tour. I had not scheduled one. That was the day I stopped reacting like a wounded father and started thinking like a postal inspector. I wrote down dates, times, names, every phone call, every letter, every envelope, every statement that came late, every document with a signature I did not remember giving. I requested copies of court filings. I checked notary stamps. I ordered my credit report. I called old contacts quietly. I did not tell my children I was doing any of this. Then my house caught fire. Not a big fire. Not enough to destroy it. Just enough to scare an old man. The official report called it an electrical incident in the back mudroom. Smoke damage spread through the kitchen. Insurance got involved. Caleb handled the claim through the conservatorship arrangement before I even saw the paperwork. He told the insurance company I would be staying with. Family. He told the court I had agreed to temporary relocation. He told me the house needed work and it was safer if I stayed away. I had not agreed to any of it. For 4 months, I lived in a small furnished apartment above a closed barber shop in a town 40 miles away, paid for from my own money through accounts I no longer fully controlled. I was supposed to feel grateful. Instead, I watched. Being a postal inspector taught me patience. Criminals like speed. Evidence likes time. During those months, I changed. I lost weight because grief and cheap soup will do that. I grew a short beard because I stopped caring about razors. Cataract surgery changed my glasses. My hair, what was left of it, went white. The limp from my hip made me walk slower. When I looked in the mirror, I saw my father near the end of his life. My children stopped visiting. They sent texts written like customer service. Messages, hope you're resting. We're handling things. Please don't stress yourself. One evening, a letter arrived at the barbershop apartment addressed to Henry Vale. That was odd, because Henry Vale was the name I had used only once. Years earlier, when Ellen and I booked a small cabin for our 30th anniversary. Henry was my middle name. Vale was Ellen's maiden name. A private joke. A secret little vacation name. Inside the envelope was a folded sheet from a storage facility called Cedar Lockers. There was no note, just a receipt for Unit 19B, paid 3 years in advance. At the bottom, in Ellen's blue handwriting, were 4 words, for the route home. My hands shook so hard I had to sit down. Ellen had been dead 2 years. The receipt had been mailed automatically after a renewal triggered. She must have set it up before she died. She had used Henry Vale because she knew only I would understand it. The next morning, I took a bus to Cedar Lockers. Unit 19B was small, barely bigger than a closet. Inside were 3 things: a sealed plastic bin, an old mail carrier's canvas route bag, and the missing recipe box with strawberries painted on the lid. I did not open it right away. I sat on the concrete floor of that storage hallway, held the box to my chest, and cried like I had been waiting 2 years for permission. When I finally opened it, the recipe cards were still there. Lemon cake, pot roast, moon cookies, Ellen's handwriting. But tucked behind the divider labeled holiday was a smaller envelope sealed with red tape. Ray, it said, when they stop looking at you, start looking at paper. Inside was not a will. Ellen was smarter than that. There were copies of certified mail receipts, old bank deposit slips, photographs of documents, a list of names, and a small flash drive taped behind her recipe for cinnamon biscuits. There was also a letter. My dear Ray, if you are reading this, then I was right to be worried, and I am sorry. I started seeing things before I got sick. Caleb asking about property values. Marcy crying about debt, then lying about it. Blake pressing me to move money. Vivian asking strange questions about Noah's school fund. I did not want to poison your heart while I was still here. You loved them too much. Maybe I was wrong. I hope I was wrong, but if I was not wrong, I needed to protect you and Noah. Look at the receipts. Follow the returned letters. Ask why Noah's Education Trust changed addresses twice. Ask why Marcy's name appears on a mailbox she never rented. Ask why your signature was practiced on the grocery lists I kept. And Ray, one more thing. Do not trust Otis with family papers. I saw him take photographs in your office when you were at the hospital with me. I know this hurts. But you always told me the mail tells the truth. After people finish lying, I love you. Open the blue card last. Ellen, I sat in that storage unit until the hallway lights clicked on for evening. My wife had not left me a fortune. She had left me a trail. The blue card last. I wanted to open it, but I did not yet. Ellen had known how my mind worked. She wanted me to earn the whole picture before seeing the final piece. The root bag contained copies of envelopes. Some had been returned undeliverable. Some were certified notices about Noah's trust. Some were letters from an attorney I did not know. One envelope was addressed to me at my own house, but the forwarding sticker sent it to a private mailbox in Marcy's town. Another showed a change of address request I had never filed. That made my blood go cold. Mail redirection was not just family drama. It was fraud. I spent the next week doing what I had done all my working life. I built a timeline. The first false address change had been filed 6 months before Ellen died. The target was not all my mail. Just financial statements, trust notices, insurance letters, and county tax correspondence. Whoever did it knew exactly what to steal and what to leave alone, so I would not. Notice, the private mailbox was rented under the name R. Mercer Family. The application used my date of birth, the emergency. Contact was Otis, my own brother. That was the first hidden truth. The second one was worse. Noah's Education Trust had not simply been watched by my children. It had been drained through a series of family hardship loans, authorized by documents bearing my signature. The money had gone to a shell company tied to Blake's failed investment firm. Caleb had used part of it as collateral on a development project. Marcy had covered credit card debt. Vivian's charity had received a donation that looked clean on paper and dirty in the soul. Noah's college money. Ellen's gift to him. Money she had saved from years of sewing curtains for neighbors and working school cafeteria shifts after our kids were grown. Gone. But not fully gone. Not yet, there were pending transfers. A final account restructuring had been scheduled for the following Monday. If completed, it would convert what remained of Noah's trust into a family-managed investment vehicle. That meant Caleb and Blake could hide the loss, delay discovery, and make themselves look like responsible stewards. Monday was 6 days away. That became my clock. I knew I needed help, not Preston, the tired lawyer. Someone sharper, someone who knew elder exploitation and financial fraud. In Ellen's letter, one name appeared twice, Lila Rosenthal. I found her office above a bakery in Maple Ridge. Lila was maybe 50, with silver at her temples, and reading glasses hanging from a chain. Her waiting room smelled like coffee and old books. She had once been an assistant county prosecutor. Now she handled guardianship abuse and financial exploitation cases. She read Ellen's letter without interrupting. Then she read the receipts. Then she looked at me and said, "Mr. Mercer, your wife built a criminal map." I nodded. Lila tapped the private mailbox application. "This is strong. I need Noah protected before Monday. We also need to stop your competency hearing. There's another hearing?" Her face changed. "You don't know?" She turned her monitor toward me. A petition had been filed 2 days earlier. My children were asking for emergency full conservatorship and authority to place me in a memory care facility pending evaluation. The hearing was set for Friday morning, 3 days away. Their claim said I had become unreachable, delusional, and aggressive. It said I had been seen wandering near my damaged house. It said I had threatened Caleb. It said I believed my dead wife was sending me secret messages through recipes. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because evil sometimes has no imagination. It takes the truth and bends it just enough to make it sound insane. Lila said, "Have you contacted them recently?" "No." "Have you threatened anyone?" "No." "Have you been near the house?" "No," she leaned back. "Then they're moving fast because something scared them." I thought about the storage receipt. Maybe Otis had received a duplicate notice. Maybe Cedar Lockers had called the old number. Maybe someone realized Ellen's box was not destroyed in the fire. The real danger was not what they had already stolen. It was what they needed to finish before I could prove it. That afternoon, Lila made 3 calls. One to the bank trustee, one to the county recorder, one to a retired judge she knew who now handled emergency mediation. She also told me something I did not expect. "Your family has scheduled private transportation for the next few days." "What?" She pointed to a note from her investigator. "Caleb's license was suspended after a DUI diversion last month. Blake doesn't like driving in the city. Vivian uses a car service for events. They booked a driver under an executive family account for Thursday and Friday. Same company both days." I stared at her. "You want me to ride with them?" "No," she said. "I want you nowhere near them without protection." But my mind had already gone somewhere else. When I was young, before I joined the Postal Inspection Service, I drove a delivery route. I knew roads. I knew silence. I knew how invisible a working man could become when rich people thought he was furniture. Lila saw my face and said, "No." I said, "They won't recognize me. They are your children. They haven't looked at me in years." She did not answer. Told her I had a cousin who owned a small chauffeur company called Black Lantern Transport. That was not entirely true. Earl was not my cousin by blood, but we had been boys together, and that counts for something in old age. Earl owed me a favor from 1999, when I proved his brother had not stolen disability checks from a mail route. He gave me work sometimes when I needed cash after my accounts got restricted. He knew me as Henry Vale because I asked him to keep my name quiet. Black Lantern was the company my family had booked. Lila rubbed her forehead. "Mr. Mercer, this is a terrible idea. Probably. It could backfire. Most useful things can." She studied me for a long moment. "You cannot record illegally." "No Missouri law." "You cannot provoke them." "I won't." "Speak unless spoken to." "You cannot confront them." "I won't." "You call me the second anything happens." "I will," she sighed. "Your wife was right. You are difficult to surprise." The next morning I put on the black suit Earl gave his drivers. I wore a cap, low-tinted driving glasses, and thin grey gloves to hide the scar on my thumb that Marcy might remember from childhood. I kept my voice low and rough. My beard covered my jaw. My name badge said Henry. At 10:10 a.m., I pulled up to the front of the Stanton Hotel. Caleb came out first, on the phone, carrying my late wife's recipe box under one arm. I nearly stepped out of the car too fast. The box looked smaller than I remembered in his hand. He had wrapped a rubber band around it. One corner was chipped. A piece of strawberry paint had flaked off the lid. He opened the rear door and tossed it onto the seat. "Careful with that," Vivian said, coming behind him. Caleb snorted. "It's a box of index cards." Marcy stepped out next. She looked expensive and tired. Blake followed her, checking his phone. Then Otis came, wearing a tan sport coat he used for funerals and lies. Noah was last. He hesitated when he saw me. For one breath, I thought he knew. Then Caleb snapped, "Get in!" They all climbed inside. I closed the door. Noah sat in the 3rd row. The recipe box was on the floor near his shoes. He reached down and touched it with 2 fingers like it was injured. Marcy saw him. "Leave that alone." "It was Grandma's." "It is evidence of your grandfather's mental decline," Blake said. Noah frowned. "Recipes are not crazy." No one answered him. I looked at the rearview mirror. His eyes met mine for half a second. Then Vivian leaned forward and spoke through the partition. "Driver, take us to Thornbridge Bank first. Then the county court annex. And please keep the radio off." "Yes, ma'am," I said. My own daughter did not blink at my voice. For 20 minutes, they talked like I was not alive. Caleb said the bank needed confidence. Blake said the final trust conversion would look clean if they could show family unity. Marcy said, "What about Dad?" Vivian replied, "After Friday, Raymond won't be in a position to object." Otis laughed softly. "Should have signed when asked." Noah whispered, "Grandpa didn't do anything." Marcy turned on him. "You don't know what adults are dealing with." "I know you said he forgot me." The car went quiet. My chest tightened. Marcy said, "I said he needed rest." "No, you said he didn't ask about me." Vivian's voice sharpened. "Noah, this is not the time. But he always asked about me." Caleb slammed his hand on the armrest. "Enough." I kept driving. My grandson turned his face to the window. One tear ran down and sat on his chin. He did not wipe it away. By the time we reached Thornbridge Bank, I knew this was not about property anymore. It was about a child being taught that love could be rewritten by whoever controlled the paperwork. At the bank, I waited by the car. They went inside for 40 minutes. Noah stayed with me because Vivian said children made meetings messy. He sat in the back seat, staring at the recipe box. After 10 minutes, he leaned forward. "Sir?" "Yes? Do you ever miss somebody so bad your chest hurts?" I swallowed. "Yes. My grandma made biscuits. They were ugly, but they tasted good." I smiled before I could stop myself. Ellen's biscuits had always leaned to one side. Noah studied me. "You smile like him." I looked straight ahead. "Like who?" "My grandpa." I said nothing. He opened his backpack and pulled out a folded paper. "They said he's sick in his mind now. But I found this in my old dinosaur book. He wrote it before Grandma died. He held it toward me. I should not have taken it. But I did. It was a note in my own handwriting from 3 years earlier. "Noah, if you ever feel alone, remember the blue door opens for you. Always, Grandpa." I had forgotten writing it. Noah's voice broke. "If he wanted me, why didn't he call? There are pains that come quietly, and there are pains that knock the breath out of a man." That question did both. Before I could answer, the bank doors opened. I folded the note and handed it back. "Some doors get blocked," I said softly. "Doesn't mean the house is empty." Noah stared at me. Caleb came back angry. Blake looked pale. Vivian was whispering fast into her phone. Marcy clutched the recipe box against her chest now, not like trash, but like a problem. They got in. Caleb said, "Court annex, now." I drove. Their conversation was tighter after that. The bank had not approved the trust conversion. A hold had been placed. Someone had requested review. Someone named Lila Rosenthal had filed an emergency notice. Blake hissed, "How did she get the mailbox documents?" Otis said, "Maybe the old man found something." Marcy snapped, "He can barely find his shoes." I looked in the mirror. Noah was watching me again. At the court annex, they met their lawyer, a tall man named Derek Sloan. I recognized his name from the emergency petition. He had the kind of face that smiled only with teeth. They stood near the curb. Speaking loudly enough for me to hear through the lowered window, Sloan said, "The recipe box is a problem only if contents can be authenticated," Caleb said. "Most of it is cards and old junk," Marcy said. "There's a flash drive missing." My hands tightened on the wheel. Otis turned red. "You told me it was destroyed." "I thought it was," Marcy said. Vivian looked toward the car. "Lower your voices." Then Sloan said 7 words I still hear in my sleep. "Use the boy if the judge hesitates." Noah did not hear. He was still inside the car, but I heard, and in that moment any last soft place I'd protected for my children went still. Use the boy. That was their plan. If the judge hesitated to take my rights, they would claim Noah was afraid of me, or confused by me, or harmed by contact with me. They would put a child on the scale to outweigh an old man. I did not speak. I did not move. I did not even let my face change. Quiet revenge does not begin with anger. It begins with memory. I remembered every postal fraud case where the guilty person thought the old clerk. The tired carrier, the quiet widow, or the slow janitor did not matter. I remembered telling young inspectors, "People tell the truth in front of those they consider beneath them." My family had just made the same mistake. That evening, I took the car back to Earl's garage. Then I met Lila in her office. I told her everything I had heard. She wrote it down, but without a recording, overheard statements were only part of the picture. Then I gave her something better. Noah's note, not to keep. I'd asked Noah if I could show it to someone who helps grandfathers and children. He had nodded. Lila looked at my handwriting. This matters. How? It shows an existing loving relationship. It contradicts their claim that you withdrew from him. Then she asked, "Do you still have the blue card Ellen mentioned?" I reached into my coat. I waited. Open it. The blue card was one of Ellen's recipe cards. On the front, she had written Blue Door biscuits. There was no such recipe. On the back was a list of 6 numbers, each paired with a word. B, Route 314, Maple 7C, Hymn 42, Apron M12, no avail. Ask Ruth. Lila frowned. Codes? Not codes, locations. Ellen and I had built a life out of small routines. 19B was the storage unit. Maple was likely Maple Ridge. Hymn could be church. Apron could mean the apron pocket, where she hid grocery money. M12 might be a mailbox. Ruth was Ruth Bell, Ellen's oldest friend. The next day was Thursday, 1 day before the emergency hearing, 4 days before the bank deadline. We followed Ellen's blue card at Maple Ridge Community Church. The secretary remembered Ellen. Everyone remembered Ellen. She had organized funeral meals for 20 years. Hymn 7C turned out to be a hymnal in the choir room. Inside the back cover, Ellen had taped a small envelope. It contained a printed email from Vivian to Caleb. The email discussed keeping Raymond emotionally isolated until the petition clears. It also mentioned Noah's attachment issue and suggested limiting the boy's contact with me so he would adjust to a new family structure. New family structure. That was what they called. Stealing a grandfather from a child. At Ruth Bell's house, we found the next piece. Ruth was 81, sharp as a needle, with a cane she used like a judge's gavel. She hugged me, cried, then slapped my arm for not coming sooner. Ellen told me not to interfere unless you came with the blue card, she said. She gave us a sealed envelope. Inside was a notarized statement Ellen had signed 8 weeks before her death. It did not transfer property. It did not change a will. It documented concerns. Ellen stated that she had witnessed Caleb removing financial papers from my desk. She had seen Marcy practicing my signature on discarded grocery lists as a joke. She had overheard Blake asking Otis about redirecting mail. She had photographed Vivian searching through Noah's trust folder during a family barbecue. Ruth had witnessed the signature. A notary had stamped it. Lila's eyes lit up in a way that almost scared me. "This is not a hidden will," she said. "This is contemporaneous evidence." I did not know the legal word, but I knew what she meant. Ellen had left a witness from the grave. At my damaged house, we found Apron. The kitchen smelled of smoke and plaster. Caleb's contractor had removed cabinets, but not the old peg rail near the pantry. One of Ellen's aprons still hung there, stiff with dust. In the pocket was a key, not a house key, a mailbox key, M12. The private mailbox location was a shipping store near the highway. Lila came with me. The owner, a nervous man named Dennis, did not want trouble, but when Lila showed him the court notice and Ellen's documents, he admitted the mailbox had been rented by Marcy and Otis using family care paperwork. He still had copies of identification scans. He also had security footage archives because the store had been involved in a package theft case. On the footage, dated over a year earlier, Marcy stood at the counter while Otis signed my name, not his name, mine. He practiced once on a scrap, then signed the rental form. Watch my brother steal my identity in grainy, black and white video, while a rack of birthday balloons floated behind. Him, Dennis, looked sick. Lila looked like a hunter who had just found fresh tracks, but the final piece came from the recipe box itself. Under the stack of cards, beneath a false wooden bottom so thin I had missed it even after opening the box. Ellen had hidden a small folded photograph. It showed Noah at age 7, standing beside the blue front door, holding a plate of crooked biscuits. On the back, Ellen had written, "Ray, if they use age to make you look weak, remember this. Strength is not noise. Strength is keeping the door open for the one person they tried to leave outside." Behind the photo was a bank receipt for a separate minor protection account I had never known existed. Ellen had opened it with her own sewing money. Not huge, not enough to make anyone rich, but enough for legal fees, emergency housing, and a guardian petition. If Noah ever needed protection, the named emergency contact on that account was not Caleb, not Marcy, not Otis. It was me, and the backup contact was Ruth Bell Ellen. Had not just protected money, she had protected a path. And before I tell you what was inside that file, let me ask you something. If your own child tried to erase everything your late wife built, would you stay quiet or would you fight? I did not fight with fists. I fought with paper. By Thursday night, Lila had enough to file an emergency response. She requested suspension of Caleb's authority, a forensic accounting of Noah's trust, preservation of bank records, and denial of the memory care placement. She also requested that Noah be interviewed, privately by a court-appointed child advocate, but we still had one problem. The hearing was Friday at 9 a.m. My family thought they were bringing me in as a confused old man who could be cornered, pitied, and put away. They did not know I had been driving them for 2 days. Friday morning came cold and grey. I drove the Black Lantern car to Marcy's house at 7:15. My family came out dressed for victory. Caleb wore his navy suit again. Vivian wore pearls. Blake carried a leather folder. Otis had polished his shoes. Marcy held the recipe box like she hated touching it. Noah came out last. He looked smaller than the day before. Marcy had dressed him in a button-down shirt and combed his hair flat. He climbed into the back seat without speaking. Vivian handed him a tissue. "Remember what we discussed," she said. He whispered. "I don't want to," Caleb said. "You don't have to want to. You have to be honest." Noah looked at his shoes. I started the car. Halfway to the courthouse, Blake rehearsed. If asked, Noah says Raymond forgot visits, became angry, and made him uncomfortable. Noah said, "He never made me uncomfortable." Marcy's voice cracked, not with sadness, but panic. "Noah, please. This is to help Grandpa." "No, it's not." Vivian leaned forward. "Young man, after everything your mother has sacrificed, you will not embarrass her in front of a judge." Noah's eyes filled. Otis muttered, "Boy needs discipline." That was when I almost broke. Almost. Then Noah looked at the rear-view mirror and spoke to me. "Sir, can you stop the car?" Marcy snapped, "No, please." I pulled to the curb in front of a closed florist shop. Caleb barked, "Driver, keep going," but Noah had already unbuckled. He pushed open the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. Marcy reached for him, but he moved away. I got out slowly. "Get back in the car," Caleb said. Noah shook his head. "I won't lie about Grandpa." Marcy's face twisted. "You don't understand what will happen if you don't help us." Noah looked at her with the exhausted courage of a child who has been carrying adult fear too long. "Maybe something honest. That boy saved me before I saved him." Caleb stepped toward him. "Enough." I moved between them, not fast, not threatening. Just there, Caleb stared at me. "Who do you think you are?" I took off my cap. The street went silent. Marcy made a sound like she had dropped a glass. Vivian's mouth opened. Blake stepped backward. Otis turned the color of old paper. Noah stared at me, then his whole face changed. "Grandpa?" I took off the glasses. "Yes, buddy." He ran into me so hard my bad hip burned. I held him anyway. His shoulders shook. "Mine did too," Marcy whispered. "Dad?" Caleb looked from my face to the car to the courthouse down the street. "You set us up." I looked at him. "No, you hired a driver. You just forgot drivers can hear." Blake pointed at me. "This is entrapment," I almost smiled. "You always did use words you didn't understand." Vivian recovered first. "Raymond, this is exactly the kind of unstable behavior we warned the court about." Lila's car pulled up. Behind us, she stepped out carrying a briefcase and wearing a look I would not want aimed at me. "Good morning," she said. "Everyone should proceed to the hearing separately." Caleb said, "This is a family matter." Lila looked at Noah, clinging to my coat. "No," she said. It stopped being that when you involved forged documents and a child witness. At the courthouse, my family tried to regain control. That is what people like them do. They can be caught with matches in one hand and smoke behind them, and they will still complain about the lighting. The hearing room was small, not a grand courtroom like on television. Just wood benches, a state seal, a judge named Honora Pike, and a clock that seemed louder than it should have been. My family sat on one side with Derek Sloan. I sat on the other with Lila. Noah was taken to a private room with a court-appointed child advocate, a woman named Ms. Keene who wore a purple scarf and spoke to him like he was a person. Not evidence, the judge began with the emergency petition. Sloan stood and painted me as unstable, secretive, deceptive, and potentially harmful. He said I had disguised myself as a driver to spy on my family. He said I had become obsessed with my dead wife's recipe box. He said my accusations were fantasies built out of grief, Marcy cried. Caleb stared straight ahead. Vivian held tissues again. Otis looked at the floor. Then Lila stood. She did not raise her voice. She did not perform. She simply began placing paper on the table. First, the false change of address request. Then the private mailbox. Application. Then the video still of Otis. Signing my name. Then the bank notices redirected away from my home. Then Ellen's notarized statement. Then Vivian's email about isolating me. Then trust documents showing loans made from Noah's education fund. Then a letter from Thornbridge Bank confirming a suspicious conversion attempt scheduled for Monday. With each document, the room changed, not loudly, quietly like a house settling before collapse. Sloan objected. Lila responded. The judge allowed more than he wanted, Caleb whispered to his lawyer. Marcy stopped crying. Blake's foot bounced under the table. Vivian's face hardened into something cold and flat. When Lila presented Ellen's letter, Sloan objected again. Hearsay, Lila nodded. We are not offering Mrs. Mercer's letter for the truth of every emotional statement. We are offering it to explain the location and preservation of physical evidence, much of which is independently verified. The judge leaned forward. Proceed carefully. Lila did. She did not make Ellen sound like a ghost. She made her sound like what she was, a dying woman who saw a pattern and preserved records. Then came the moment that broke my daughter. Lila called Ruth Bell. Ruth walked to the witness chair with her cane, swore an oath, and looked at Marcy with grandmotherly disappointment so strong it could have peeled paint. She testified that Ellen had been afraid, that Ellen had shown her copied documents, that Ellen had asked her to witness a statement because she did not trust what was happening around Noah's trust, that Ellen had not wanted revenge. She had wanted protection. Sloan tried to make Ruth seem confused. Ruth looked at him and said, Young man, I remember the serial number on the washing machine my husband bought me in 1974. Do not test me on dates. For the first time in weeks, I almost laughed. Then Miss Keene returned with Noah. The judge cleared the room of unnecessary people for part of his statement, but I was allowed to stay. So were Marcy and Caleb. Noah sat in a chair too big for him. He held the folded note I had written years before. Judge Pike spoke gently. Noah, nobody here wants you scared. I just need to understand what you know. Noah nodded. Did your grandfather ever hurt you? No. Did he ever scare you? No. Did someone ask you to say he did? Noah looked at Marcy. My daughter covered her mouth. He looked down. Yes. The judge's face did not change, but the room did. Who asked you? Noah whispered. My mom. Uncle Caleb, Aunt Vivian. Mr. Blake said it would keep Grandpa safe, but that didn't sound true. Marcy began crying for real then. Not pretty crying. Not courtroom crying. A broken, ugly sound. Noah, she said. I was trying to fix things. He turned to her. You told me Grandpa forgot me. She had no answer. That was the wound she could not explain. Money can be excused by desperate people. Lies can be dressed in fear. But telling a child he has been forgotten by someone who loves him, that is a special kind of cruelty. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Caleb tried one last time. He walked up to me, anger shaking in his jaw. "Dad, you don't know what pressure I was under." I looked at him. "Then you should have asked for help. You always made me feel small." That surprised me, not because it was true, because maybe some part of him believed it. I said, "Caleb, I gave you my Saturdays, my garage, my savings, and every chance I knew how to give. If my love felt small to you, stealing from a child was not going to make it bigger." His eyes flickered. Then the anger came back, because shame often wears anger when it does not know where else to go. "You'll destroy this family." "No," I said. "I'm finding out what's left of it." Inside the hearing room, Judge Pike issued temporary orders. Caleb's financial authority over my accounts was suspended. Immediately, the trust conversion was blocked. A forensic accountant was appointed. The matter was referred to the county prosecutor and postal inspectors for investigation of identity theft, mail fraud, and exploitation of an elderly adult. Noah's trust assets were frozen pending review. My competency petition was denied for lack of credible evidence, and a new independent evaluation would be scheduled only if needed. Most important, Noah was assigned a child advocate, and Marcy was ordered not to pressure him about testimony. Temporary visitation with me was restored under supervision until the family court could review the emotional manipulation concerns. The judge looked over her glasses at my children. "This court is not a tool for impatient heirs," she said. "And children are not props." Vivian stared straight ahead. Blake looked like he might faint. Otis whispered, "I didn't know it was that serious." Ruth, sitting behind me, muttered, "Men always say that when the handcuffs are nearby." No handcuffs came that day. Real justice is slower than movies. But consequences began before sunset. Thornbridge Bank froze the remaining accounts. Caleb's development lender opened an internal review. Vivian's charity board requested her resignation pending investigation. Blake's firm locked him out of client files. Otis stopped answering his phone until 2 postal inspectors visited him the following week. Marcy called me that night. I let it ring twice before answering. For a while, she only breathed. Then she said, "Daddy." I closed my eyes. "A child's old name for you can open doors you nailed shut for survival." "I'm here." I said, "I messed up." "Yes. I didn't mean for it to get so bad." That is one of the saddest lies people tell themselves. As if harm is a road that moves under your feet without permission. I said, "You let it get bad one choice at a time." She cried. Blake said we were drowning. Caleb said the trust could be fixed before anyone knew. Vivian said Noah would be better if he wasn't attached to a dying past. Otis said you had enough. I just wanted everything to stop falling apart by pushing me under it. She had no answer. I thought of her at 9 years old, standing on a chair beside Ellen, burning pancakes and laughing until flour dust floated in the sun. I thought of her now, grown and frightened and guilty. Both were true. That is the hard part about family. People who hurt you were once small enough to carry. "I love you, Marcy," I said. "But love is not permission." She sobbed then. "I know. Noah comes first now." "Yes, and the truth comes before comfort." A long silence. Then she whispered, "Mom knew, didn't she?" I looked at the recipe box on my table. "Yes," Marcy cried harder. After we hung up, I sat alone in the barbershop apartment and opened Ellen's cinnamon biscuit card. The flash drive was still taped to the back. Leela had made copies, but I kept the original. There was one file on it I had not watched, a video. I pressed play. Ellen appeared on the screen, sitting in our kitchen, thinner than I wanted to remember, wearing her blue sweater. The recipe box sat in front of her. She smiled at the camera like she was trying not to cry. "Ray," she said, "if you found this, then I am gone and you are angry. I know you. You are sitting there with your jaw tight, trying to decide whether sadness or fury gets the chair beside you." I laughed once, and it came out broken. She continued, "I need you to hear me. Do not let what they did turn you into what they became. Fight clean. Tell the truth. Protect Noah, and when it is over, cook something. You always think justice is the end of the work. It is not. Love is. She looked down, then back at the camera. I hid things in recipes because recipes are promises. You take what was handed down, you add what is needed, and you feed whoever comes home hungry. That is family, Ray, not blood alone, not names on accounts. Family is who keeps the door open. She reached toward the camera, then stopped. One more thing. If Marcy breaks, remember she was not born cruel. But do not let pity make you careless. Mercy without truth is just another lie. The video ended. I sat there a long time. Outside, cars passed on wet pavement. Somewhere below me, the old barber pole creaked in the wind. I wanted Ellen back so badly I could hardly breathe. But for the first time in months, grief did not feel like an empty room. It felt like a hand on my shoulder. The legal process took 9 months. 9 months is a long time when your family is in pieces. The forensic accounting found that most of Noah's trust had been misused. But not all was lost. Insurance bonds, bank liability, and recovered assets restored a large portion. Caleb avoided prison at first by cooperating, but he lost his project, his reputation, and his control over my affairs. Later, when investigators found he had hidden one transfer, he pled guilty to financial exploitation and received probation with restitution, community service, and a felony record that ended his development career. Blake's crimes were worse. He had forged documents, moved funds, and used client accounts in ways that brought state charges. He served time. Vivian's charity collapsed under review. She was not charged with the largest crimes, but emails proved she had helped isolate me and pressure Noah. She lost the public image she had polished for years. For someone like Vivian, that may have hurt more than jail. Otis made a deal. He admitted signing my name on the mailbox form and photographing documents from my office. I have not spoken to him since. Maybe I will someday. Maybe not. Forgiveness is not a performance. It is a door that opens only when truth stops knocking with dirty hands. Marcy faced consequences too, not prison. The judge believed she had been pressured by Blake, but still held her responsible for lying to her son and helping redirect documents. She entered court-ordered counseling, lost temporary decision-making authority over Noah's finances, and had supervised family therapy with him for months. Noah came to my house every Saturday. At first, visits were supervised by Ms. Keene or Ruth. Then, slowly, trust returned, not the old kind. Simple and untested, but a new kind built carefully like a repaired chair. The blue house was restored after the fire. The insurance company had to reopen the claim when evidence showed Caleb inflated repairs and steered work to a contractor friend. My kitchen got new cabinets, but I kept the old peg rail where Ellen's apron had hung. The blue front door was repainted the exact shade she loved.